Welcome back everyone to another Victoria Free Dev Diary video. Now, I actually recorded this exact segment except without one of the Dev Diaries last week, but it went kind of not that great, and part of the recording is in my why Paradox removed War Micro from Victoria Free video, which you can watch last week, which is my Schizo Fury video. But basically, I didn't really do a great job going efficiently over the dev diaries themselves. So yeah. Anyway, basically, last time we were off, we were talking about essentially these diaries that just released from number 22 to number 23, which were the sort of more controversial ones that dealt with warfare in Victoria Free. And before then, we went over the diplomatic ones all the way up to 20, except we're still missing 21 in the middle, and yeah, the ones that I'm re-recording right now. So, number 21 is diplomatic plays. Now, yeah, the sort of main event today is the Army and Navy mechanics, which we're going to go over in a little bit. But first off, let's actually finish off the diplomatic plays part of the diplomacy. It's pretty good because basically, last time we saw the diplomatic actions, and now we have the diplomatic plays, which are essentially the diplomatic actions sort of times 1,000, all right? So basically, diplomatic plays are replacing crisis mechanics and war goals from Victoria 2. Now, they consider this to be more or less a signature feature for diplomacy in Victoria Free, and that's because these are basically what countries are going to be, and thus players are going to be doing to, you know, do the big moves. So diplomacy at the point of a gun is exactly what diplomatic plays are, as they allow you to try to achieve any objective normally achievable by war by diplomatically maneuvering to force the other side to give it to you without a fight. Essentially, we're going to look at the diplomatic plays mechanics, and that's going to explain what they mean. Basically, Victoria Free has no declare war or casus bellis. Instead, you start a diplomatic plays and diplomatic play, and wars are always preceded by diplomatic play. Now, this is kind of a rigid sort of structure. I'm not the biggest fan of it, to be completely honest. You'll see what I mean. You'll see what I mean when we actually go ahead and look at the mechanics themselves. So these are the 14 ones that you have at the start. The 14, yeah, that's an unfortunate number. Okay, the 14 diplomatic plays. We have the annex subject, we have the conquer state, the liberate subject, which I'm guessing is you going in and forcing another country to liberate their subject. Make puppet, make territory, which I'm not too sure what that means. Open market is my, yeah, okay, it's recording. Just checking the audio levels thing, good. Take colony, take treaty port. Treaty port, really interesting how this is a standard diplomatic play that doesn't seem to be really special, or, you know, yeah. So basically, yeah, you're gonna be able to do the treaty port in a very widespread fashion. You can take treaty ports off of presumably anyone, and that's nice. Transfer subject, I'm guessing that means it's their subject now it becomes my subject. We have the banning of slavery, so yeah, cutting down the size. Independent something, looks like there's a pawn, so I'm not sure why it would be different from liberate subject, but okay. Then you have the making of vassals and return state. Now, vassals are like puppets, except for unrecognized. Sorry, not unrecognized. Yes, okay, unrecognized. Sorry, except for unrecognized states. And return state, which I'm guessing is going to be basically you have my cores. Yeah. So once the diplomatic play is started, there's a number of things that can happen immediately. First is that the country that is being targeted is notified, along with any countries that are considered potential participants in the play. Now, this basically means that countries that have an interest slash an alliance with the sort of passive actor, the recipient, the target of the diplomatic play, have an option to join in. So usually it includes any country with an interest in the strategic region, as well as countries that have strong diplomatic reasons to get involved, such as allies or the overlord or the defender. However, only the initiator and the target are active participants. All the others have the potential, just the potential to play part, unless I think it's, the target has an overlord, in which case they're supposed to be taking over, if I recall correctly. Next, the primary active participant on each side, being the initiator and the target, are given a number of maneuvers. Maneuvers is a currency that primarily depends on rank, with higher rank countries having more maneuvers. So if you'll recall in the last Dev Diaries, we saw how basically prestige is now synonymous with rank, and rank is just the way countries are, countries are classified. And it depends on, it depends on the #1 great power and, the GDP, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, this also appears to be affecting diplomatic play. So I'm guessing that great powers are going to be the most maneuverable in this kind of scenario, while secondary powers and unrecognized countries are going to be less favored. And determines how many actions such as swaying and adding demands the primary participant can take during the course of the play to try to gain the advantage over the enemy. There are 3 distinct phases on the diplomatic play, which is where my point about this being sort of sluggish and I'm not too sure whether or not this is a good idea part comes in. Now, I like when it comes to replacing the crisis system, this is good because it's actually a lot more versatile and a lot more interesting than the crises used to be in Victoria 2. And frankly, the crisis system was good, and I do like the fact that they're improving on it, but I'm not sure that this should be replacing entirely declarations of war. But hey, Paradox has made their choice, so I can't exactly complain. Basically, escalation is a value that increases each day after the play is started, much like there was crisis temperature, if I recall correctly, in Vicky 2. Now, the first phase is the opening moves. Basically, you set your initial stance and your initial demands. So the target has to set their main demand, which is like sort of the main counter to the main demand that has started the diplomatic play. During the opening moves, it is impossible for other countries to fully commit to one side or another, with the sole exceptions of overlords of the primary participants. It also isn't possible for either side to back down, which is another thing I'm not exactly too in favor of. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, in my opinion, but oh well. So we have over here a diplomatic play that would be happening. I'm guessing the player is in Cape Colony, so, South Africa, basically. They want independence and they add open the British market. But of course, since they have 0 military power and 0 naval power, or maybe they have 0 brigades and 0 ships versus 100 brigades and 150 ships, on the UK side, they have the UK AI is basically trying to take everything in return, and it's not like the Cape people can do much about it. But as you can see, there's France over here on the fence, and this looks like Hanover supporting the UK. So you have this little UI where basically other countries that can be participating in this diplomatic play are laid out, and they can sway one way or another depending on basically demands. Now, as you can see, there's an add war goal button for the Cape Colony, which most likely is going to allow him to add demands that would sway France to come over to their side. For example, give France, I don't know, give France a British colony or something like that. Yes, so once the escalation reaches a certain point, opening moves phase ends and the diplomatic maneuvering phase starts. So if by this point the target has not sent their main demand, they're automatically given one, usually war reparations. This is the main phase of the diplomatic play, which occupies the majority of the escalation scale and during which most of the action will take place. Basically, this is sort of the this is the sort of bread and butter of the demand system and, you know, the diplomatic play system, and where sort of the more interesting things will happen. It's clearly the phase that Paradox is thinking about when they're thinking of diplomatic plays and sort of how they can impact the diplomacy of the game. And probably the reason why they disallowed backing down before this phase, because otherwise they kind of maybe believe that, I don't know, some of the spice is going to be taken out of the system if you can just capitulate, or get the AI to capitulate by being much stronger than them, or get another player to capitulate. I don't know. Don't ask me. Don't ask me why that would be bad, but hey, apparently Paradox thinks so. So we've only a fraction of the military strength of the Great Qing over here. We have a crisis between the Great Qing and the Kokand. So this play still has the potential to become pretty complex if Kokand can convince the Sikh or Russian empires to support their cause against the Qing. Perhaps gaming out of subject is not worth the risk of a protected war. So basically he wants to subjugate these guys. He wants reparations. Of course, Qing has a lot more soldiers than Kokand. But yeah, there's the potential of the Russians to come in and support one side. This looks like it's Nepal? Question mark? Or maybe one of the, maybe Kunduz, maybe one of the Afghan Pamir countries, swaying towards the Qing, whereas we've got the Sikh swaying more heavily towards the Kokand. And there's also Bukhara, so this is sort of how it's going to look like. Frankly, I don't necessarily like this UI a lot. Imagine when you're in the late game and you've got possibly 10, 15 powers that are interested in a potential crisis, because, you know, World War I, the mechanics should sort of evolve into that, right? As more countries sort of have things to say about the world, as more powers rise, and especially as their sort of power projection expands and they can have more interests in more places. What's that gonna happen? Am I gonna have to scroll down like 4 pages of potential parties? I don't know. Again, UI is in work in progress. So the diplomatic maneuvering phase is also where participants are expected to use up their available maneuvers to add the demands and swaying potential participants to their side. It's also possible to spend your maneuver during the opening moves on adding demands for yourself, burning through most of them, but this might leave you at a significant disadvantage later down the line, because there is basically the possibility for countries to switch sides in the middle of the play. It's just like something that I like in concept, but I can see a lot of potential frustrations from the system. Yeah, it will be explained in a little bit. So basically, demands are war goals, and include a wide variety of requests under duress, such as ceding land, giving up claims, or becoming a subject. Only the primary participant can add demands, but in addition to demanding things on their own behalf, they can also demand things on behalf of other countries backing them if said country agrees that the demand is something that they want. So basically, to sway a potential participant, you can offer them to conquer stuff, and you can see there's going to be a little indicator to sort of tell you, hey, this is something that they want. So yeah, as you can see right now, we've got the Austria, or someone's going to fight Austria, and whoever is trying to sway the Prussians to back them up is telling them, hey, you're gonna get West Galicia, and that would get the Prussians perhaps on their side. Now, the thing is, I'm not sure if you're also going to be able to offer your land to a potential third party, which would make sense, you know, both in terms of multiplayer and also in terms of sort of historical accuracy. If you think about the Treaty of oh god, my brain is exploding. The treaty between the Sardinia Piedmont and the French Empire, the Third French Empire, the Second Empire, to support sort of Italian unification. I don't remember the name of the place where they met. Don't fucking remember. Basically, Italy was like, hey, you're gonna have Savoy, and you're going to support us. Not sure if that's possible. It really should be, but I see no reason why it couldn't be modded in later down the line, even if Paradox doesn't add it. So yeah, not too worried about this. Also, swaying can also be done by sort of promising an obligation. Also, if you add if you add demands, you're gonna get infamy. And it's also going to damage relations with other countries if you demand too much for yourself. And this is going to push people to the other side. So there's, again, a lot of sort of interplay of potential things that can happen. Yeah, pretty much. Oh, or giving them a piece of a land or a subject of yours, for example. Okay, good. I like this. However, if you think the play is over just because France threw their weight behind the initiator and there isn't anyone strong enough to oppose them, you'd be wrong. It's possible for countries that have promised to back a side to betray that promise and go back to being undecided or even switch sides entirely, which is what they were talking about earlier. It's a bad idea to burn all of your moves earlier on because then you'll have nothing left in case the AI decides to betray you, which is why I said that this is potentially incredibly frustrating. Because think about the scenario, for example. You are allied with an AI, and you think, okay, so would be great if you supported me in this diplomatic play. Maybe you even burn some demands and infamy to get them on your side, and then they switch sides. Like this, a lot of this depends on how they code the diplomatic AI and how they sort of, they code the sort of weights for the AI to decide whether or not to betray you or not. But it kind of feels like it's got the potential to be very frustrating because, like, for example, I'm not sure if many who are listening right now have played EU4, but in EU4 it's really frustrating when the AI who should be supporting this actually also happens in Victoria too. In fact, even more because you have less feedback on why the AI is sort of taking the decisions that it is taking. It's often really annoying, like, trying to understand why the AI, for example, has strategic reasons to be hostile to you, even though you're allies, right? And sometimes they just decide to hate you. And of course, the AI, given that it is the AI, is going to definitely have like a plus 10 or plus 20% weight for other AIs to support it because, again, it's not that good, so it needs a little bit of cheating. So yeah, this sort of entire thing looks like it could be good in terms of multiplayer, but at the same time, when it comes to a multiplayer sort of lobby, the diplomacy can be done on a human side, and all you need is sort of to give the tools to the humans, right? To be able to make diplomacy, you know, give them the tools to sort of switch around provinces, to do the thing or not do the thing. You don't need this whole system. So this is why I'm just not too sure that this system is a good idea. This whole diplomatic play system. I like it in principle, and it's definitely better than Crises. I'm just not sure it should substitute declarations of war. It's good for Crisis, though. If we're talking about replacing Crisis with this. This is good. Although I'm not sure there's actually going to be Crisis in this game, because it doesn't sound like there's going to be organic diplomatic plays that can arise out of, you know, incidents that are outside of the player of the tags' control. So players and AIs. It's like the player clicks the diplomatic play and the diplomatic play is has started. Okay. The AI clicks the diplomatic play and the diplomatic play starts. There is never like a crisis where no one really has the control, but everyone can jump in, right? So yeah, that's sort of my issue with this. It's the fact that it's going to be sluggish, number one, and two, possibly frustrating because of, you know, getting the AI to do what you want is always a bit tricky. And it's not going to really enhance the multiplayer diplomacy experience much more than, you know, just allowing more diplomatic actions, you know, would. Anyway, Peru abandoned their support for Bolivia in the diplomatic play against Ecuador, obviously. So the final phase of the diplomatic play is the countdown to war, which is exactly what it says on the tin. Now, both sides are locked down, and it is no longer possible for countries to declare or abandon support for either side, nor it is possible to add new demands or do any swaying. In fact, the only thing that is possible during this phase is backing down, and this is usually the phase where you will see one of the sides give in, though it is also possible to back down during diplomatic maneuvering. So backing down is just conceding to the main demand on the other side, not the secondary ones, much like in the Crisis in Victoria 2. This means that there are some cases, in some cases, a reason to want the play to escalate into war, because you're going to be able to, you know, press more demands. It's also possible to back down all the way up until the escalation meter hits 100, at which point the diplomatic play is over and war breaks out. Anyway, basically, once the crisis is not resolved, you go into war, and that's sort of what the next two Dev Diaries are about. Now, in my Why Paradox removed the micro from Victoria Free, I essentially make an argument, very sort of long and winding argument, that where basically, because of the current state of game development as an industry, plus sort of Paradox's current predicaments as a development studio and as a publisher, basically the Paradox team probably, very likely, doesn't really have the resources to develop a sort of well flushed out warfare system, and especially when it comes to the AI, it would have a lot of trouble making a sort of convincing AI, convincing enough so that the players are going to have fun. So they decided to sort of mega simplify the experience. Now, I'm not sure if you probably already know what's going on with the Victoria Free War, but in case you don't, we've got this sort of concept of war Dev Diary that sort of very, very vaguely articulates what they want to do with what they don't want to do with the warfare of the game. Now, Victoria Free's warfare is supposed to be based on a few pillars that are articulated here. Basically, we've got war as a continuation of diplomacy, which is why you have that whole slugging, sort of building up of tensions with the diplomatic plays, sort of giving the option to either side to back down after a while, and that's that. Then you've got war strategic, which is basically that the player should not be directly influencing, which is the big one. It's sort of the player shouldn't be directly influencing how sort of troops are moving and how, you know, your generals are going about their daily business. The player should be instead only involved on the strategic side, making the sort of big level decisions that in the end are the most important in any historical war. And this is sort of the big one, because in case you somehow don't know, there are no units on the map in Victoria Free. Everything happens at a sort of abstracted state level, almost like a board, or well, even with a board game, you've got units on the map, almost like a browser game. Even almost, you've got basically a front line between two warring countries, and that front line is literally just the entirety of the shared contiguous land border. And that shared contiguous land border is a front where you assign generals, and then the generals fight battles on the map, much like navies and Hearts of Iron 4 fight battles on the map. So you don't actually, well, actually even less, because when it comes to navies and Hearts of Iron 4, you can click on them and tell them to move between one tile or another. They've just completely removed the visualization of units on the map and the ability to move them around, and even the ability to see what they're doing. Like, this is not going to be the same thing as spectating a Hearts of Iron for two AIs going against each other, because even in that case, or just completely automating your troops, even in that case, the units are on the map. No. Instead, you've got basically a very abstracted system where troops are sort of moving around, and you see alerts pop up about battles that they're fighting, but you have absolutely no way of influencing how anything is going, except a couple of orders that you can give to your generals, which we'll look at in a little bit later. So basically, all your influential decision making, all your agency is going to be focused on generals. And then, of course, the sort of economic, the upstream economic and technological and diplomatic gameplay. Then we've got worse, costly. I mean, it was in Victoria too. Mobilization will be kind of funky, and which is good and all. Now, preparation is key. Again, mobilization is important. Also, sort of how you promote generals, how you manage the politics of war, how you manage the economics, and well, not even really the supply lines, but more the sort of overall supply, because I believe there is the stockpile mechanic. And also, can you sort of protect your sea lanes, which we'll look at in the last Dev Diary that we have on our sort of plate today. And yeah, you've got the navies matter, because basically you're gonna need to protect your convoys and your sort of global trade to acquire goods that you don't have in your own country, which is going to be, of course, crucial to avoid rebellions and obviously fuel your industry, which is, again, good. Like, I'm not entirely against all that they're doing. I like some of the concepts that they're putting forward. It's just, I really would like to micro my units, but whatever. And yeah, microing units is engaging and fun, but hey, who cares? So the sixth and final pillar, war changes, is all about the technological advances of the 19th century. So again, you can see how this is a continuation of Victoria 2, but also a just very, very radical departure, as they say, from other Paradox Grand strategy games. Because the absence of units you move on the map is massive. This has never ever been done in a Paradox strategy game. And I'm not, as I mentioned in the other video, I'm not exactly buying that they did this because they felt it was a good idea for the game. I just think they really don't have the development resources to handle a, maybe not ideal, but their sort of dream concept of how warfare should look like, with the player directing and with the AI being able to oppose a competent enough challenge to actually implement within, you know, the sort of deadlines that they have for releasing this game. And it might be the case, for example, that we're seeing something very close to what Hearts of Iron 4, was like, in that Hearts of Iron 4 released in a very, very, very unfinished state. Looking back, this is something that came to my mind now. Like, looking back, Hearts of Iron 4 was missing so many things. It's ridiculous. But it was a sort of blueprint upon which they built up, and now with the release of No Step Back, this, like, it's starting to feel more interesting now than the previous Hearts of Iron games. Before No Step Back DLC, I would have straight up told you that the mechanics and the gameplay of Hearts of Iron 2, which is the one that I have experienced, the previous Hearts of Iron game that I have experience with, but probably also Hearts of Iron 3, are more interesting and engaging and sort of complex, and, you know, they have more potential for player agency, and yeah. However, with this newest DLC release, I'm not that sure, because, you know, you've got your supply lines. There's a lot, like, to still be improved on Hearts of Iron 4. But again, it took like how many DLCs to get there? It's a bit of a problem of, you know, Paradox right now. It's that they have to do so much stuff, you know what I mean? And yeah, their games just require a lot of work. And due to economic reasons, I don't think really have the development capacity to run, what is it, like 4 different mainline titles at the moment, because Imperator is gone, but you've got your Europa Universalis 4, you've got your Crusader Kings 3, you've got your Victoria 3 soon enough, your Hearts of Iron 4, and your Stellaris, right? So that's 5 titles that they need to sort of work on and patch and blah, 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 blah. And each of these is a very complex title. So yeah, Paradox is in trouble. I'm not gonna lie. And basically, my problem with this is from, again, the sort of consumer slash, you know, player, mostly single player, but also a bit multiplayer, you know, interested in multiplayer, that sort of the game becomes less engaging. But at the same time, I also understand, I think, it would be better if the real reason why they've removed Warfare and Micro is that they literally cannot develop it. It would be better as a decision that they did that, rather than the sort of one proud Bavarian argument of, oh, I want grand strategy games to just focus on the economic and diplomacy sides. Because, as I said previously, there really isn't any reason why it should be either or. If you have the time and resources to develop both. I don't know. Yeah, just disappointed overall, but whatever. The Paradox is still saying that they did this because of their game vision or whatever, but I'm not sure. Anyway, let's. So basically, we've got the pillars over here. This is the Dev Diary number 23, which is fronts and generals, which is the big one, sort of the. It's, I think, also been one of the least well received ones for reasons that we'll get to in a little bit, understandably. Also, a lot of these are just are not really screenshots that are from the game. For example, you can see that this one with work in progress over here, that is from the actual game. This one of the fronts, I'm pretty sure is a Photoshop, because it doesn't say work in progress, it says early draft. Let's see if we have anything else down here. Yeah, see, as you can see, early draft. This is an in-progress artistic mock-up of a battalion garrison focus list. So it's not even worth to really analyze the UI that much. But hey, they're sort of putting out there what they think the game is going to look like. This is again very, very early in progress. There was a release date leaked for, I don't remember when, like next April, Q1 or Q2 2022. There's no way the game is coming out at that point, I don't think. Not if you've still got to make the UI for one of the basic features of the game. Anyway, blah 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 blah. They keep sort of towing the studio line of we're doing this because we think it's gonna make the game better. Why would you remove features to make the game better? That's not how game development works generally, but whatever. Anyway, first I want to present the concept of fronts, basically, which is what I talked about. In Victoria 3, rather than manually maneuvering armies around the map, you assign troops via generals to the border provinces where two combatants clash. And now you might be saying, hey, but wouldn't this mean that you can actually like choose if more troops, for example, go into, I don't know, let's take France, more troops go into Picardy or Champagne as opposed to Ile-de-France? No. This is just generically to the border provinces. You assign them to the front and then the AI puts them in a place or another. How that is supposed to work, only the AI is going to know, because you're going to have no control over it. All combat takes place on these fronts, which again kind of reminds me of a browser game more than a grand strategy game, but whatever. Where a victorious outcome consists of moving the front onto your enemy's territory while preventing incursions into your own. Oh boy. Could talk about that for a while, but no, I'm not gonna. Fronts are created automatically as soon as two countries begin to oppose each other in a diplomatic play, so you can already begin to sort of mobilize your guys and send them while the diplomatic play is happening. Therefore, a front has always got one country on either side, but it is possible for generals from several countries to be assigned to the same front, so sort of, you know, sending your guys to support your allies. So you've got a screenshot, again, sort of artistic mock-up of what they think it's going to look like. As you can see, you've got the Texas-Utah front with sort of 10 battalions on the Mexican side and 8 battalions on the Texas side. You can see down here the flag of each country that is involved in the battles. You can see a log of previous battles, which is good because otherwise you have no clue what the fuck is going on. And you can see that in the previous battle, the Texans have lost 2 battalions, while the Mexicans have lost 0, and that is a victory for Mexico. And you can see also the active battles and how many troops are involved in each. Yeah, and I think the reason why the other army right now is not taking part in the battle, because as you can see, there's 2 armies on the Texan side, one with 5 battalions and one with 3. And the reason why this one isn't taking part of the battle is because they're in a defensive stance, which you can see by the sandbag icon, while the other one is in an offensive stance, and this one is also in an offensive stance or something like that. So basically this means that these 2 guys are seeking to fight each other, while this one is not actively participating. I'm not sure why there isn't a sort of active defense or... yeah, a sort of active defense stance and just a static defense stance. This looks like it's going to be really sort of wonky, and I'm going to get mad at the AI for not getting into the battle. Much like with Hoi 4 Navy's Strike Force, sometimes the AI just decides not to sail out the fleet even though the enemies have been spotted. There's just a lot of ways in which this can break, and that's a bit my problem. Now, you've also got the Advancement tab, which is, I think, supposed to represent sort of how much territory you're occupying out of the front. Here it says 100%, but 0.0 out of 40. I've got no clue what the fuck this is supposed to mean. And you can see that on the map, You don't see the actual guys themselves, but you can see that there's, like, for example, a battle going on here. Again, this is purely sort of cosmetic. Like in Hearts of Iron 4 Naval, there are these pop-ups that come up, and as you can see, there's the pop-up over here for the previous battle. You're presumably going to be able to click on it, and sort of the battle screen opens to tell you why things happened in one way or another. Again, very much like Hoi 4 Naval, right? That's really what this reminds me of. But you can see that there's these pop-ups. I'm not sure if this is like a raid or something, but there's a burning little icon. Yeah, basically in Hoi 4, the reason why these pop-ups are like good is that they visualize what's going on, but also because the units themselves are present on the map when these things are happening, right? So it makes sense that I am able to see on the map when my units that are being controlled by the AI that are being automated are doing something, because this has a real map relevance, whether or not my guys were fighting on this tile here or on the other side there. Because if I have a fleet that's over here and needs to reinforce, it's going to get here instantly, while it's going to get here in a while. I'm not sure if any of these mechanics are going to be in Victoria 3. Again, simplifying the game a lot, really. Even from a just completely strategical point of view, this doesn't enhance strategy by removing tactics. This removes tactics and removes a lot of strategy as well. But hey, whatever. So these visuals are, of course, work in progress. Now, the health and status of your front is a primary indicator of how well the war is going for you. And I mean, the primary thing is going to be... The primary thing here is going to be how many troops you got versus how many does the enemy have. And yet the only other major factors are going to be generals and sort of technology, right? Terrain is like not very important. Because here it says, are your soldiers there demoralized and dying in droves from attrition? Double plus on good. You're simplifying the game, okay? Paradox. You're simplifying just a little bit of optics lessons. When you're simplifying something, don't unironically use Newspeak to explain your simplifications, because yeah, this doesn't make it look good. Like this is supposed to be, you know, a parody of Newspeak. Well, I'm not sure. You're just unironically saying double plus on good when you're sort of dumbing things down. When whatever. If you know what I'm talking about, you're laughing. If not, you're thinking that I'm crazy. Don't worry. Go read 1984 or something. Okay, whatever. So it does like imply that attrition is present in Victoria 3, but exactly how it's going to work, I'm not sure. Because, like, for example, if you look at a Victoria 2, and especially Hearts of Iron 4 after the latest DLC with the supplies and all that, attrition comes from basically the tiles, right? It comes from how the tiles are interacting between your economy and the troops you've got on them, and the technology level, and the terrain, and how many guys you've got there. You've got too many troops, you've got too few troops, blah, 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 right? So attrition in Victoria 2, in EU4 even though it's got less complex mechanics for that. Although it does have Scorched Earth, so it's that's definitely something. In normal Paradox strategy games, attrition is an interactive thing. Paradox Interactive. Like, you can choose to ignore the attrition by stacking a whole bunch of guys in one place for a sort of temporary combat power increase, right? that's the tactical slash strategic decision. It can be just tactical to win a battle, or it can be strategic to make this sort of, to make a surprise push through a territory that your enemy thinks you're going to ignore because it's a, you know, it's a fucking wasteland or whatever. By making this entire system and removing the sort of army maneuvering and tactics entirely, by removing the importance of single tiles and provinces, by taking them out of the game entirely, by even removing the significance of terrain on tactics, because you're not going to be saying, hey, I want to defend the mountains, or I want to defend behind the river or behind the desert. Or you're not going to be saying, hey, I want to advance through the desert to be faster. You're going to have no control over this. So why is it even in the game if, for all intents and purposes, it's not there? So again, attrition itself is not going to be that important of a factor, because it's just going to be, hey, is my general good and is able to avoid attrition? Or, hey, is my general bad and is not going to be able to avoid attrition? I suppose the only agency you have is how many troops you send on one front. If you know that that front is all in, you know, tropical jungle or whatever, you're going to send less troops, and that's going to lower the attrition, period. That's literally the only way you can interact with attrition. Anyway. So in large endgame conflict, you might have hundreds of thousands, possibly even millions of soldiers in active service, which is a lot to keep track of. Well, it really isn't, because you're not keeping track of them. You're just sending them to the fronts. The number of active fronts, however, is likely to be much more manageable. Again, probably 1 or 2 or 3. Like, if you're Germany and you're fighting World War I, you're going to have a front with Belgium, a front with Russia, and a front with France. That is literally all the management you're going to be needing to do, which is like, all right, okay. So despite the fact that they removed all this detail and sort of engagement from the actual, you know, tactical maneuvering warfare side of this, you can go down and you can look at each single pop in your troops, in your brigades or whatever, right? Which is good. It's great. Because you're gonna be able to see which units are actually more mutinous than the others. Because if the guys are struggling, they're gonna be more likely, of course, to revolt. They're going to be probably less effective, which is, again, great. I love this. This is great. Fantastic. It's, you know, it's going to be a lot more interactive when it comes to revolts and these kinds of things. It's going to simulate basically unit quality, but then you remove any importance to this information because you cannot control the units themselves. Like, you can't send the shitty, struggling units back, you know, to be secondary, you know, to be secondary garrisons, to be reserves behind the front line, because by now they can't fight anymore. So what is even the point of them being modeled this way, in this way? I still prefer the complexity, but it's not very, you know, it's not very interactive with the rest of the experience, which is sad. So yeah, now generals are actually much more interesting. Now generals are characters who command servicemen and officers into battle on fronts. Servicemen and officers are the pops that make up the battalions, and then later the armies. Generals are in charge of the armies, and every country will start the game with one or a few generals. Some of them are actually historical, which is pretty great, and you can recruit more as needed. Now, they're recruited from strategic regions, and they gain command of as many locally available troops in that region as their command limit allows. So, for example, you can get a 5-star rank general. You know, you buy him and you promote him, and he's gonna be able to command, let's say, I don't know, 20 battalions by default, plus another 10 from technologies, plus another 5, I don't know, from whatever the fuck, national laws or something like that. and this means that he's gonna have a total possible strength of 35. But for example, if you haven't built up the military infrastructure of the region, he's not gonna have that many troops sort of available to take command of. So he's gonna have 27 guys because that's all he can get. In sort of reverse, if you have 70 troops in a strategic region, you're going to need to recruit another guy and promote him to get another 35 command limit. I don't think you can go over command limit because, again, this is... You're not assigning troops to a general, which is another thing that's like, oh my god, why wouldn't you do this? Why wouldn't you do the basic assign troops to a general? The general automatically takes command of troops. So you can't choose good troops go on one general, shit troops go on another general. At least I don't think you're gonna. It doesn't sound like you're gonna be able to do this, which is like, oh my god. Oh my god. It is so simplistic. Oh my god, man. It's just painful to read even. It's almost like they didn't even think about, like, some of the mechanics that they could implement even with all the simplifications that they've made on a sort of general level, but whatever. Like, why can't I assign troops to one general or another? Why can I not assign, I don't know, the troops that I upgraded to my best general? I don't fucking know. Whatever. Removing agency, removing player agency, removing mechanics, whatever. Like other characters such as heads of states and interest group leaders, this is where we get to the good stuff with the generals, right? You can promote generals freely, but higher ranking generals can effectively command more troops because they cost more bureaucracy. And also, generals have a set of traits that determine their abilities, which is, of course, same with admirals. But these traits also sort of determine how the characters function on the political sphere, and they have a personality trait, they have skill traits, and they also have conditions, so they can like get damaged or ill or whatever. And also they're aligned with an interest group, which is, again, this is all really, really good. I love how generals are sort of political characters, and they can get involved in the interest groups, and if the interest groups are in conflict with your government, then those generals are a potential sort of security risk, because they might, if the interest group revolts, they're gonna support the interest group, and they're gonna take the troops with them. Yeah, this is all good. This is all lovely, fantastic. Yeah, there's a revolving door between military and political office. Yeah, your decisions on who to recruit, promote, and retire, which should ideally be meritocratic-based, sometimes have to be tempered by concerns for internal power balance and stability due to the impact generals can have on the country's interest groups. Because generals that are powerful contribute to interest groups' political strength and their clout, so therefore, basically, how much the interest group is able to influence the politics of the country as a whole. And the amount provided is dependent on their rank, so granting promotions to a general will increase the influence of their interest groups, which is another way you can manage interest groups and have player agency in the interest groups. Again, unlike in Warfare. So if you force them into retirement or replace them with someone else, their interest group's approval will be impacted, of course, because you just took their stuff. Third and most importantly, if an interest group becomes revolutionary, their generals and admirals will take up arms against you. If you put all your eggs in the basket of some farmer's boy who turned out to be a strategic genius and you suffer an agrarian uprising, you may end up fighting a rebellion against that same commander. So yeah, then you can... The only way you can actually influence war is with orders. Orders that you give to generals and admirals. Now, to admirals, we're gonna get to that in a little bit. Next dev diary. But with generals, literally all you can do is you can tell your general to stand by, which is he returns home from their current front dispersing their troops into their home regions garrison forces to slow down enemy incursions. So basically, basically be a reserve / guerrilla. Advance front, which is attack, and the friend front, which is defend. That's warfare in a 2022 Paradox grand strategy game. I don't know. Anyway, these orders may end up being executed in different ways depending on the general's traits, resulting in different troop compositions and battle conditions during the operation. Again, nothing wrong with this. I just kind of would prefer if I had some measure of control over it. Like, when it comes to, like, for example, Hearts of Iron 4, tactics in Hearts of Iron 4, there's a mechanic, for those who don't play that game, there's a mechanic called tactics, which basically is supposed to represent how your general is going about fighting the battle in the tile, right? And each general used to just pick at random, well, maybe not at random, but at random with a few weights to influence their decision. Of course, like, better tactics would be slightly more common if your general, you know, could employ those. And certain traits gave your generals a easier chance to, you know, employ certain tactics. And you unlocked new tactics throughout the game. For Hearts of Iron 4, even that was too little control. What happens literally within the battle, like, where you can never have an influence. So they decided to add a sort of preferred tactic decision, basically, that gives another way in which you can promote the usage of a tactic or another. So, yeah, that's Hearts of Iron, right? Putting your nose even on the little Battle of El Alamein or whatever. While Victoria Free is like, you can't even, like, you can't even assign your higher quality troops to a general that you know is going to be more cautious with them. Again, even assuming absolutely no player agency and absolutely no control. Oh, God, for fuck's sake, man. Anyway, I can't even continue this. Now the only other thing that's important is the sort of the conscription and mobilization mechanics, and the the production methods. Now, basically, mobilizing. The way that works is that troops normally are just sitting around in their barracks, right? They're probably at half strength or whatever, and they're just doing their thing. Now, when diplomatic plays are starting, you first mobilize the sort of standing troops, right? And of course, this will increase the sort of consumption and cost of these troops by, you know, a massive amount. And then you can also mobilize conscripted troops, which are presumably going to suck more, right? Hold on. And the speed by which troops are readied is dependent on the infrastructure of their local state. So high infrastructure states can mobilize more troops quickly, while low infrastructure rural states will take much longer to organize all their manpower, which is supposed to be sort of the Franco-Prussian War, railway impact and all that. Mobilized generals cannot be demobilized until the war is over, which is like, okay. Press X to doubt the historical accuracy of this design decision. Yes. So yeah, you're mobilizing, you're doing your things. It says over here. Work in progress screenshot. Your land army is composed of battalions, which are groups of 1,000 workforce with servicemen or other professions. Basically, it's your overall units. These pops work in either barracks or conscription centers. Now, it's an interesting... this is actually an interesting sort of dichotomy, because in Victoria 2, the difference between conscription, mobilized and standing armies, was that the basically mobilized armies appeared on the map. It was only infantry, and sort of the amount of mobilized troops you could raise was dependent on your, primarily your population and your politics and your technology. These were the three main things, and there was no way to sort of manage mobilization beyond that. You just click the mobilize, and it would over time mobilize literally everyone, right? With this, they're sort of returning to Victoria 1, where you had the option of building either standing troops or, much cheaper mobilized troops, or conscript or not mothballed reserve troops, which you could then mobilize. Because if you build a barracks, the barracks is going to recruit but sort of regular battalions. If you build conscription centers, basically are activated as needed during the diplomatic play or war, and recruit civilians into a temporary military service. So also what they're going to do is they're not going to try to convert pops into soldier pops and build, you have troops that can be immediately or very quickly mobilized. Instead, once they're activated, you're going to, your laborers and farmers are going to be turned into soldiers. Maybe not soldier pops, they're going to be turned into troops, and they're going to be going to the war. So yeah, this is really nice. Also, barracks has a wider selection of production methods to choose from, particularly high-tech late-game production methods. Now, this is the way you actually upgrade your troops. You don't build newer kinds of troops. You don't go from hussars to airplanes. You don't even research. You don't even research techs that directly buff your troops. You don't research machine guns, and that automatically buffs all of your infantry instantly. Instead, you select production methods in conscription centers and barracks, which then have to stockpile the necessary goods to employ that quote-unquote production, although we should more properly be referring to it, I guess, as fighting method. So, if you unlocked new artillery, like for example, you've unlocked, howitzers, I'm not sure if that's going to be a thing. If you've unlocked howitzers, now the barracks is going to need to buy the howitzers, which is of course going to be sort of paid by the state. It's going to have to buy the howitzers before the unit that is based in that barracks can get the bonus for having howitzers. That's how it works, I think, and I like it. I actually like it a lot. Whatever. Yeah. Basically, this is an artistic mock-up of how the sort of garrison armies are going to look like. And I think the production methods are these. Like, as you can see, there's the general. There's something that I'm not sure, like this image, I'm not sure what that means. As you can see, you can like look at the battalions that are under the command of one general, and you can see the production methods that are being used. Yeah, at least I think that these are the production methods. So, you've got your probably like early infantry, because this guy's got a pike. Early artillery, because that cannon looks old. Or Napoleonic artillery or whatever. Napoleonic cavalry, maybe, who knows. No officers, ? And no medics, I'm guessing. There's probably going to be more. I would prefer it, to be honest, if you would have the... Maybe this is just a macro, and you can... I don't remember, actually, production methods. Can I get a production methods dev diary? on the line, please? Oh, for fuck's sake, I'm gonna have to go all the way down, am I? I want to look at the production methods dev diary, because if I recall correctly, you could change the production methods of each individual building if you wanted, right? And be like super autistic, right? I think that would be ideal, especially in this case, because again, then you have more customization. Although it would be okay also to have it would be needed to also have the macro political movements, standard of living, to have the macro way of sort of changing the production methods of everyone in an army, right? Infrastructure, damn, production methods were so far behind. Institutions, laws, interest group. Oh, what the fuck, man? Oh, there we go. Production methods was number 5. Yeah, food industries and champagne. Yeah, you can choose the production methods. For each individual building. Or at least each individual group of buildings in a state. Huh. Kind of... It's probably just a macro. You can probably customize which production method you're changing around on an individual basis, which would be good. Anyway, yeah, that's it. This is the wars. We'll see how they play out, I guess. I don't think they're gonna change pretty much of anything until DLCs, and it's very sad. Anyway, now we have navies. Now this sort of approach works better with navies in a game like a Paradox game than armies, because terrain has less impact, although not necessarily, but yeah, terrain has less impact, and also people are generally less interested in it and are happier automating it. It's less, I suppose, monkey brain, dopamine fun, doing a naval encirclement as opposed to doing a land encirclement. Haha, funny joke. Yeah, but even this one they've managed to simplify from the Hoi 4 naval system, which I think is really good. But yeah, anyway. So navies. Basically, as we said, the ability to sustain our empire depends on a large extent to how well you can compete on the high seas. Because this is the era... They say this is the era of truly global trade. This is the beginning of the era of truly global trade, which continues to this day. Which also meant that countries were highly susceptible to the disruption of that trade, and the higher they climb, the harder they may fall. In Victoria Free, maintaining a powerful blue water navy is a large but necessary expense if you wish to ensure the integrity of your markets, overseas colonies, and trade routes during war. And even while at peace, a large fleet will provide you with prestige. So, naval should serve a strategic precision instrument to conflicts between seafaring nations. The sea is not another front in a war. The province-based moving front system works to represent conflicts over territory, but it wouldn't be nonsensical at sea, where no nations can be said to meaningfully control an enormous stretch of oceans. Instead, armies and their flotillas are deployed to meet strategic objectives to disrupt the enemy's operations or economy, or defend such an attempts by the enemy. This is a long, winding way to say that you don't have a front where the two are sort of butting heads, which wouldn't make any sense on the seas. Instead, you're sort of giving orders that still affect wide areas, but paradoxically, you're going to have more control over navies than armies, because you can actually tell your navies what to do. And if your current objective clashes with the enemy objective, it's going to result in a battle, which might sound very nebulous, but at the same time, it's actually got a lot more control than the land warfare. Shoots himself in the head. So yeah, as with land warfare in generals, you can control your navy through your admirals. Now, generals and admirals are similar. The amount of resources that they get depends on their rank. You could grant via promotions to reward your favorite commanders. Actually, how the fuck do you build ships? Because I haven't seen this yet. The rank influences the interest groups. Both generals and admirals get traits that affect both themselves and those serving underneath them. So admirals are the interface to your navies. Admirals are given orders which they attempt to carry out to the best of their abilities using the flotillas that they have been assigned. How do you assign flotillas to an admiral? Is it just from shipyards? Or shipyards, naval bases? I'm not sure. Whatever. Are you going to be able to customize your fleet composite? Oh my god. So, you know, I came into this happy and I'm already like having doubts. Okay, whatever. So you can these are the 4 orders that you're given with admirals, which you might notice is it's a lot more than well, it's 1 more, but that's already like 33%. 33% more than the land orders. Oh boy. Intercept any hostile navies around a strategic region while keeping your fleet stationed close to shore, which is sort of the strike force from Hoi 4 Naval. Patrol any shipping lanes between the Admiral's home region and remote region, intercepting any hostile navies encountered, which it's interesting because it's kind of like patrol and convoy escort from Hoi 4 Naval, but kind of sort of better in my opinion. Yeah, it's even better. This game could do something better than Hearts of Iron 4. It's incredible. Basically, what this kind of tells me it's going to be is that, like, your ships are going to go through, for example, I don't know, London to Gibraltar, and they're going to protect the shipping lane between that. And if any navy comes at any point in the route, they have a chance to intercept them. So they're going to be going back and forth in the ether, again, because you're not going to see the navies on the map. They're going to be going back and forth in the ether and protecting that the convoys of that sea lane. Then you can do convoy raiding, which is the opposite. You raid a naval route. And naval invasion to establish a beachhead and front line on the enemy soil by escorting and protecting a general's land forces in a joint operation, which is going to create a new front. Now, I don't think they've really explained to us if you can select a particular point to naval invade. Oh, for fuck's sake, man. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think this has been really explained, which is sad, but whatever. So again, a lot. You can already see how there's a lot more control that you have over navies as opposed to armies. Which, hey, I don't really complain because I like navies, but I'm not sure. Not everyone likes navies in these games. The thing is, the one thing that's really missing is a sort of search and destroy mission to take out the enemy fleets. You can take out the enemy. You can tell your ships to take out the enemy convoys, but if the enemies do not accept battle by telling their navy to protect their convoys, yeah, you're gonna be sinking convoys, but you're not gonna find the enemy ships. They can probably keep them far away in one way or another, right? There's also no mothball. There's also no like passive reserve, like stay in port, and there's also no blockade orders. Again, this could benefit so much from looking at the Hearts of Iron 4 naval system where all those things are possible. Dies of death. I suppose if you don't select any orders, that's how you keep your fleets in port. Okay. Yeah, blockade would be good. and search and destroy would be good. But oh well, the other ones are good enough. But they do say that they want to add a fifth order blockade to disable any force. So let's hope that they do that before any DLCs. Now, convoy raid and naval invasion are aggressive orders meant to hurt the enemy in different ways, while intercept and patrol are defensive orders that are supposed to counter the other two. So, of course, intercept is more meant to counter naval invasion. And if it was in the game, blockade and search and destroy, while patrol is meant to counter convoy raiding. But to really understand how these work, we have to start by talking about shipping lanes and the supply networks. Now, shipping lanes are facilitated by vessels called convoys, which are basically your transport ships. These are created automatically whenever it's necessary to move goods and or people overseas. I'm guessing if you have enough ports, of course. The three main reasons this happens are due to naval trade routes between non-adjacent markets. Like, for example, I'm importing things from East Asia. Remote states connecting their market through a port. So, I don't know, Louisiana to New York City transportation, perhaps. And battalions sent to front lines that can only be supplied by ship. Much like in any other Paradox game where you have a convoy routes when naval invasions happen. When a player is about to take an action that establishes such a shipping lane, they are warned of how many new convoys would be required for this action, which is based on the size of the route or the army supplied. Oh Allah, praise be to you. Praise Allah that the Paradox game communicates to me how many convoys are going to be needed beforehand. Praise be to Allah. So shipping lanes are always established by the shortest possible path. Okay, as defined by the number of nodes in the naval network it passes through. I'm not entirely sure that this is supposed to be like the way to do things, you know, Paradox, because in your other game, Hearts of Iron 4, you added the sort of block naval zone mechanic. Not sure how to explain this. Basically, you can tell your convoys not to pass through a sea zone because you think that the enemy is going to be easily able to raid there. So it would make sense if I'm the United Kingdom to tell my ships to avoid the Bay of Biscay if I'm at war with France, because that's about the only place where France is going to be able to raid my stuff, right? Question mark? Maybe you should add the thing that is present in the other game and can be easily added to this game, Oh my God, man. Sometimes some of this just makes me think that they're just not thinking about what's going on with their game, and they should probably also get like some people to come in who like are autistic and play a shitload of their games to sort of give them advice, because it kind of sounds like some of their developers, I mean, because they have better things to do, don't have time to really play their other games or their previous games. I don't know. Whatever. At least the designers should know better, right? The project leads and all that. I don't know. Okay, so you can see that this means that you have supply networks like this, where basically different nodes are connected by routes, and the routes are the routes are applied by the ships of several countries, and you're going to be able to see your own supply network. Hopefully you're going to be able to get some information on other countries' supply networks. I think that's where the screenshot down here comes in. Yeah. So you're going to be able to see, okay, how many convoys from one country are using this route and why, which is this image right here. You can see, for example, if you're looking at the Macaronesian Sea, which my geography is bad, but isn't that in Oceania? Or am I completely stupid? Macaronesia. Oh no, it's this one. Okay, it's the Azores. All right. I guess I was confused with Austronesia. Yeah, you can see that there you've got Great Britain has supply network in this node. And you can even see, I guess, if you have better intel on countries, you're going to be able to see, that they're importing small arms from France to Morocco. They're importing artillery from France to Morocco, blah, 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 blah. Exporting sugar from Venezuela to the Russians, blah, 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 blah. So what this allows you to do is say, okay, so there are these sort of trades going on. I want to disrupt them. For example, I'm at war with the Moroccans and I don't want them importing artillery from France. So I send my ships over to the Macaronesian Sea to intercept those convoys, and that's going to lower the enemy trading efficiency and potentially prevent them from getting those goods. So yeah, which is going to so if you do some convoy raiding, this will do damage over time to the affected shipping lanes, causing both an overall drop in efficiency of the affected countries' supply networks, but also a larger local drop in the efficiency of the damaged shipping lanes. And of course, it's also going to impact the sort of physical goods, not just the supplies more in general, but also the physical goods that are going into their factories. So yeah. If they're patrolling, this will cause a naval battle, which will not only sink ships, but also send the losing side back to base for repairs. Of course. Blah, blah, blah. Convoy raiding puts you at greater risk of detection and interception than if you're raiding transatlantic shipping lanes or deep seas. Okay. A fleet with an accompaniment of submarines can deal more damage before being intercepted, while a fleet of monitors has an easier time intercepting raiders, but may be more easily sunk and faced down by a more powerful navy. Blah, 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 So navy composition is going to exist. We don't know in what fashion, though. Yeah. Blah, 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 blah. Stuff. Naval invasion. Naval invasion is an order you give to provide naval support to generals landing on enemy coastline. The size of the fleet determines two things. Number one, how great is the chance that you'll be able to defeat an opponent's intercepting fleet? And number two, how many battalions you'll be able to successfully land. Okay. Are there transport ships involved in this, or is it... I don't fucking know. Even if the enemy has no defensive fleet at all, a naval invasion with a very small fleet might land too weak out of an initial force to withstand the enemy's counteroffense. Are they treating ships as transports? Like warships as transports? I don't know. Once it has been completed, it automatically turns into a patrol order to protect the shipping lane supplying the new front. Which is, I guess, pretty good. Navies are made up of flotillas, which are constructed and maintained by naval bases. Naturally, these only can be built on coastlines, which will where they consume military vessels such as man-of-wars or ironclads produced in shipyards. Okay, so vessels are produced in shipyards, and naval bases consume them to make flotillas. Okay. They also employ servicemen and officers. Flotillas differ from battalions in how long it takes to create and upgrade them, because of course this is going to take a while to build navies, as it should. I hope that you can actually see. Hold on. Will you actually be able to see how long it takes to produce? Because there's no reason why you should see how long it takes to produce a single piece of machine tools, but you're gonna see like a production number per day. It's just that with navies you're gonna see you're producing 0.0001 per day, like 0.001 dreadnoughts per day or something. Oh boy. I hope they're. Yeah, I really hope that you're actually going to be able to see. Actually, going to be able to see how long it takes to construct your ships. But whatever. Another difference between battalions and flotillas is that your country's navy is always considered to be in full active service. Sure, even though mothballing was a thing. In peacetime, generals can keep their troops on low alert, limiting their consumption and expenses. Once war breaks out, generals can be selectively mobilized. Admirals, on the other hand, have exorbitant needs and expenses even while at peace. Again, like, somewhat, like, with modern navies, it's less easy to mothball and you know, keep navies at low readiness, but you can do that. Like, there are reserve ships even in modern navies with, you know, modern technology. I don't know, whatever. Okay. On the other hand, navies provide you with power projection, which confers substantial prestige onto your country. Having a world-class navy is not strictly a requirement to be a great power, but you're going to need it. Yeah. Artistic mock-up of the navy panel with flotillas expanded. So he commands 20 flotillas of man-o'-wars on a patrol mission to secure a Spanish shipping lane. Okay. Interesting. It says here monitors, but here they say man-o'-wars. Dies. Okay. I am very confused. I am extremely confused, comrade. So yeah, you can see your flotillas. What is that normal thing? I'm guessing is like condition or attrition or something like that. Okay. Before we wrap up for this week, I want to say a few words about the lack of an order to just seek out and destroy. Oh, so they're talking about this. To sort of search and destroy. In Victoria for your commanders, generals, as well as admirals are given strategic objectives which they use their manpower and resources to carry out as best they can. If in the process they get into conflict with the enemy's forces, a battle will ensue. The outcome of that battle determines which direction the war proceeds in. The intent of this is to remove the need to babysit your commanders. Assume we did have an order to seek and destroy. None of this means that search and destroy shouldn't be in the game, but whatever. The optimal choice would be to then assign this order only to the strongest commander, fight the eventual battle, then revoke this order and give it to another commander while the first one recuperates, and so on and so forth. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Because spotting is a fit. Like, spotting has been a mechanic since like Hearts of Iron 2, right? I'm pretty sure. Like in Hearts of Iron 4, Hearts of Iron 3, and Hearts of Iron 2, navies have a spotting chance. So let us suppose that you have a fleet that's optimized for combat, and it's got a bunch of capital ships. It's obviously slower because of this, and you've put it under, you know, a commander that's got some bonuses to action, right? They're going to be less able to spot the enemy because of this, because they're going to have less screens, they're going to have less scouting, and their commander is going to be less good at spotting. So I don't know. And in Hearts of Iron 4, if your fleet is stronger, then and the enemies are on retreat automatically. If the enemies there's a setting that you can give to your navies that essentially tells them if the enemy fleet is stronger than you are, run away, right? And you can also run away manually. So if you were trying to sort of do the quote unquote optimal choice, the enemies are always going to run away from you. You know? And then they're just going to convoy raid behind you. So you're forced to have a balanced approach. even with search and destroy orders. I'm just fucking baffled, frankly. I'm just really baffled, but whatever. So, advanced front, the general's intention is simply to capture territory as efficient as possible without ideally while avoiding enemy interference, okay. Meanwhile, the intent behind defend front is the opposite. Prevent enemy incursions by defending into the place where the enemy might advance, bringing to bear as powerful force as possible. Similarly at sea, convoy raiding is about maximizing shipping lane damage while avoiding detection, while patrol is about minimizing damage to convoys by seeking out and destroying those enemy ships attacking them, not to sink ships for its own sake. But you just explained that ships are a strategic tool, right? This entire Dev Diary was, we tried to make navies important, and you should pay a lot of attention to how you manage them because, yeah, that they're going to have a lot of impact, right? Therefore, it stands to reason that sinking the enemy's fleet should be, if it's possible, a primary strategic objective in any war, right? You know, hello? Have I completely gone insane? Is the first the Russo-Japanese War not a real war? Like they're thinking about maybe World War I, like a post naval arms race kind of environment where sort of fleet and being is the name of the game, I guess. Maybe, I don't know. Are they thinking about fleet and being? Because it doesn't seem like they're thinking about this in Mahanian terms, you know, of oh my god, of navies as a strategic tool. They're thinking more on terms of just like trying to keep your navy alive being the main thing. I don't know. Question mark. Yeah, I don't know. I still don't see why you shouldn't be able to destroy ships for its own sake, because that own sake has an impact on everything, you know. Whatever. Our design intent is that this should only be necessary because your strategy is evolving, not to counter enemy movements or try to min-max your way to victory. Not to counter enemy movements? Jesse, what the fuck are you talking about? Isn't that like... isn't that a pretty important part of strategy games, to counter enemy movements while retaining your own initiative? I don't fucking know, man. Whatever. Fog of War, prevent turtling behavior. The AI has often been forced to make mistakes, to not become too good at dodging or intercepting the player in this environment. The freedom of movement that the sea provides would make a system where being in / avoiding being in the same location as the enemy so as to start / not start a battle extremely micro-heavy, annoying, and highly unfair to either the human or AI players depending on implementation. All right, so either all of your games suck, which they don't, or this game sucks. I don't know, it's just, I'm just not entirely, maybe my brain is just too small. Maybe my brain is just too small to comprehend this genius. But I just don't get it. I'm sorry. Go at it in the comments. I'm done. Thank y'all for watching. Hope you've enjoyed. I'll see you soon.